What's going on, everybody? Week one comes to a close tonight with, nope, wrong side, 49ers, Jets. Obviously, Niners fan here. But for showdown purposes, we're going to try and stay, as impartial as possible. We're going to run through some numbers real quick and go from there. I did my custom inputs on Run the Sim, so if you're using the same website, it's probably not going to come out the same. But if we're taking a look at it, we have some very interesting plays that kind of just pop out off the screen that we're going to go through real quick. First off, right now, it looks like Christian McCaffrey is going to obviously be the most overwhelmingly popular captain, but right now he's gaining about 28% captain ownership. The simulation likes him in the captain about 31% of the time. So even with his insanely high captain rate, there's still positive leverage to be had there. Negative in the flex spot. Basically, if you're playing Christian McCaffrey, you should just play him in the captain spot because that's where you're going to get a leg up on people. But so there's definitely a good case to be made to fade Christian McCaffrey tonight. It's a very, very scary thing. But if you're like me and you're only playing, not 150 lineups, that's for sure, then, you could put him in one if you want to. But if we're playing tournaments, there's definitely upside. We saw what happened last night with Puka. And I'm not saying McCaffrey is going to be hurt, but this is the first game in a very, very long season where, obviously the Niners are trying to win this game. But if they don't, it's not like their season's over. And I just don't and I think that the Niners defense is extremely good. So I think they're going to give Rodgers and company quite a lot of problems. So there's definitely a case to be made for not playing McCaffrey tonight. I'm sure that the Jets are going to come out with some sort of a plan to stack the box and just kind of make the Niners throw the ball a little bit to try and make Brock Purdy beat them, which leads me to probably one of my favorite captains in Brock Purdy. He's showing positive leverage in the simulation right now. He's only 9,200, so not super expensive. The underrated thing, too, about Brock is he does have some rushing upside. His rushing prop tonight is only 7.5 yards. So, if you're playing props, I definitely like that if you're betting the over on that 7.5 yards. But, I'm expecting Brock to probably end up with 15 to 25 yards rushing, which is not nothing, right? And if you're playing him in the captain spot, you get a 1.5x on that. So I think that is really attractive from that standpoint. From the Jets side, Breece Hall is definitely, we're looking at a negative leverage for him. Now, the Niners have extremely fast and good cover linebackers and guys, their safeties as well. So Breece Hall's, catching upside, receiving upside, I definitely think is going to be limited in this game. And, kind of piggybacking off Christian McCaffrey, if you want to play Jordan Mason, I'm all good with that tonight. He's only $3,000. He's definitely going to get some carries. How many? I don't know. I think you could probably realistically expect 8 to 10 carries maybe from him if things are going really, really well for the Niners. But look, at $3,000, you don't need a ton out of him. We're looking for 4 to 5x, right? And if he gets into the end zone at 8% owned, that's something that I'm really going to want more than anything. People are playing Ronnie Bell, it looks like, at 14% clip. I get he's only $200, but if you're going to play a cheap Niners wide receiver at $200, you should be playing Chris Conley, not Ronnie Bell. I don't even know if Ronnie Bell is going to be active tonight, to be quite honest with you. Now, he might be just because of the Ricky Pearsall situation that we're dealing with. So there's that, right? But for the Jets, I think Garrett Wilson's probably one of my favorite plays. I definitely like Breece Hall, but I think that Garrett Wilson's a guy that could give the Niners quite a bit of problems, right? Alan Lazard, I think, is a cheap option. I think that's probably my favorite Jets wide receiver is either now. I'm probably going to lead towards him because he's not a rookie, and Xavier Gibson. He was definitely involved in the passing game. He is only coming in at about a 2% owned clip. The simulation has him in the optimal lineup 20% of the time. I don't play all of my numbers off of what the computer says and what the simulations say, but when the number is that alarmingly jumping off the page, like the decision between Gibson and Conklin's coming in at like a 39% ownership. I would rather play Gibson, save $1,200, and you can put that, savings towards something else. So definitely very interesting there. I think the Niners D, both defenses, if you want to play defense, the Niners D is priced up. So I think they're an interesting option tonight if you think that, Rodgers is still a little bit slow. If anybody watched football yesterday, and if you haven't watched the game, go rewatch the Falcons game. Kirk Cousins is a guy that moves around quite a bit. He's not a runner, but he's a guy that can move and get to a throwing platform in the pocket. And coming off of that ACL injury, he looked like he was standing in cement yesterday. Now, Rodgers is even older, so I got to think that that's probably going to play a little bit of a factor. I just think that the Niners get after Rodgers pretty good tonight, and they're going to make him throw the ball a little bit to see kind of what he's got, right? Mike Williams, 6,600. I don't have a ton of interest there, but he's a guy that, is healthy. He's starting. But I really, really, really like Xavier Gibson. Definitely like both the kickers in this contest. I think that Zerline and Moody, both 48 and 4,400 respectively. Zerline is showing a massive positive leverage, again, of about 15%. And a lot of my builds, I think the Niners are going to win this game. Obviously I'm a Niners fan, but just kind of looking at it in the grand scheme of things, everybody, the public is just all over the Jets from a betting perspective. And the top 4 public teams yesterday did not go well ATS for everybody. So that's kind of how I'm positioning that. I think that Deebo Samuel is a nice play tonight. I think that they're going to use him down in the red zone to maybe alleviate a little bit of the load off of Christian McCaffrey. I don't think you're going to see McCaffrey get his normal, end of the season workload. So I think that, Debo's a good spot to go. He's priced up. He's expensive. So I don't think a ton of people are going to go to him. I don't think you have to play him in the captain, but I think he's a good flex, especially if we're looking at other guys like Gibson and a few of these other guys that we'll get to. Like I said, I think Rodgers is going to have to throw the ball a little bit tonight. So I do think that, I just don't know exactly where it's going to go. I know a lot of it's probably going to be, concentrated on Garrett Wilson, who's only coming in flex ownership wise around 31% because he's so expensive. So I like Rodgers, Wilson, Gibson, and like Zerline if I'm running a Jets onslaught. I don't think I'm going to run any more than a 4 Jets, 2 Niners lineup. On the other side, I'm okay with getting to 5 Niners just because Niners do spread the ball out so much. Ayuk's coming in for 8,400. Not really sure what to expect. I think he's going to play more than people are going to think. I think a lot of people are going to get scared away too because obviously Sauce Gardner is a guy who's going to be lining up on the outside, but the Jets do not. Now this could be different. But all the year last year, Sauce lined up on the right side, and that's it. I think he played 96% of the snaps on the right side of the defense. Could be the left side, but my point is he doesn't flop. He flops sides 4% of the time last year. So I have to think that that's, same defensive regime there with Ulbrich and Robert Saleh, who's the defensive coordinator-minded head coach. So I think that they're going to probably stay with that philosophy. Some other dart throws I like. Juwan Jennings at 4,000. I think he's interesting. Kyle Juszczyk is always a favorite one of mine because he will play a factor. At 1% owned at $600, if you're looking for really, really big salary relief, I would rather play Kyle Juszczyk over Ronnie Bell, who people seem to be wanting to play, or Chris Conley. those are kind of guys I would rather get to. Garendo, not a lot of interest. He's going to be active tonight. He's going to be returning kicks, $1,000. I like, again, I would just rather play Juszczyk for 600. $400 less. Juszczyk's just going to be out there on the field more. At $600, you literally need like 5 points out of Juszczyk to really overpay for that spot. So I like Juszczyk quite a bit. Simulation likes him too. Some guys that the simulation just does not like: Ronnie Bell, Jeremy Ruckert, New York Jets defense. A lot of people are playing them. They're only showing up in the optimal about 10% of the time based on my inputs. And then Tyler Conklin is probably the other glaring standout at a negative 14% leverage. So let's take a little look at some of the custom lineups that it shot out. The first one is a Jets 5-1 is the most common lineup with Aaron Rodgers at the captain. So it's Rodgers, Lazard, Hall, McCaffrey, Wilson, and Xavier Gibson. It's not a bad lineup. The two lineups that I do like, again, they're going to be incorporating McCaffrey at captain. The one I like the most is probably McCaffrey at captain, Rodgers, Lazard, then Purdy, Debo, and then Xavier Gibson. That's kind of a nice 3-3. The 2-4, McCaffrey and Purdy, and then Gibson, Wilson, Lazard, and Rodgers, I think is pretty interesting. And then again, the highest optimals are all coming with McCaffrey at the captain spot. Malachi Corley, Purdy, Hall, Lazard, Rodgers, and McCaffrey, I think is going to be one that if you're playing in a large field tournament, not a lot of people are going to play Corley. Not a lot of people are going to play Lazard. I think that's definitely a pretty nice lineup. You've got some other interesting ones here. Those are, projecting out to like 104, which, and then McCaffrey goes nuclear. That's definitely something you can get behind. There's a Debo lineup right here that I actually really like. So Debo captain, Lazard, Ayuk, Purdy, McCaffrey, and then Zerline. You could run Gibson in that same Lazard spot if you wanted to, since that does max out your salary. That's a good way to get different, I think, is from flipping from Lazard to Xavier Gibson right there and just leaving that money on the table. So overall, I think a pretty interesting slate tonight. I've got the Niners winning. I've got, actual dollars on the Niners winning. Here's a pretty cool, let me take a look at, see if there's just some standout. Looks like a pretty popular lineup is, going to be something with McCaffrey at captain, Rodgers, Lazard. So the more and more I see Lazard pop up in the optimal lineups, the more and more I'm apt to kind of flip. Now, if we go about not talking about the actual what the computer is telling us, one guy I haven't really talked about is George Kittle. I think that tonight could be one of those big Kittle games. The middle of the field seems to be pretty open for the Jets. Kittle is 100% healthy. He's also a guy that when he has the spike weeks, they're big, right? 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. So I'm definitely going to be getting quite a bit of Kittle at the captain spot. I definitely think that playing Rodgers at captain is something that I'm going to do a little bit too. I like that for sure. Let's see. Garrett Wilson, I think, is somebody you just have to consider at captain just because of the sheer volume that he is going to get. Breece Hall is probably not a guy I'm going to be getting to a captain because it's just I'm not playing enough lineups. But yeah, I think that like for the Niners, probably my 3 favorite captains are either Kittle, Debo, or Purdy. For the Jets, if you want to get weird and play a kicker captain, I think that Greg Zuerlein is definitely the guy to do that with. But I definitely like Garrett Wilson and Rodgers at captain as well. So that's it, guys. Good luck tonight. Have fun and go Niners.